Welcome to episode 31. Today I'm talking to Dr. Simon Jones, Principal of the London College of Creative Media. Simon is a senior HE leader with more than 25 years of academic experience in the university sector. He has led complex change agendas based around financial drivers, governance and TEF-related learner provision. He's also a former professor and dean of the Faculty of Business and Law, Leeds Beckett University, and the Guildhall School of Business and Law in the London Metropolitan University. We talk about leadership, university admissions, how COVID's had such an impact, and personal branding. Please enjoy the episode, and thanks for being a fab listener. Support me by subscribing and telling your friends. Welcome to the Johnny Ross audio experience. I'm Johnny Ross, founder and digital marketing strategist of Fleek Marketing. Each podcast I'll be bringing you an expert to inspire you, to give you some great business growth takeaways, and to get you thinking about marketing and the bigger picture of how businesses can improve, adapt and grow. I look forward to sharing this with you on each podcast, so here we go. Hello and welcome to another live Q&A. I'm Johnny Ross. Today I've got with me Dr. Simon Jones. Not seen Simon for ages. Miss you not being in Leeds, Simon.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been 3.5 years, I think, since I left Leeds. And it's the apron strings are quite tight. I do miss the place, truly.
We miss you, and in fact we were just catching up earlier. There's talk you may be back, so let's watch that space, and we might get into that as well. So Dr. Simon Jones is a principal at London College of Creative Media, and I mean you've got a huge string of to your bow of universities. You've got over 25 years experience in universities, and just tell us. You started by doing a geography degree. That was in London.
Yeah, I did a geography degree. Then I went to Hull and I did a marine biology master's and I did a PhD in planning. I only touched base with Leeds at that point during my PhD, where I came to, what was the brewery at the time, Tetley's, to fail my civil service fast stream exam. I just remember the heat of the day and the oppression of the smell of hops in the room, but otherwise Leeds was just not something you went to as a Hull student. Paradoxically, of course, when living in Hull, Leeds had become so fashionable that was a go-to weekend destination for students in the surrounding area. So it was kind of quite a turnaround, I suppose. And now I'm in London, and I'm principal of a college, university college. I suppose the other thing there, Johnny, is coming from South Wales, where I set up geography at the University of Glamorgan, I then segued into business and law, which I was the pro-dean of business and law at Leeds Beckett, and now to be principal at a contemporary music college, which is pop music, anything that isn't orchestral. So I rub shoulders with the sort of the glitterati of Top of the Pops, which is very strange. It's quite a broad thing. Ultimately, though, I know how universities work because I've worked in management and policy procedure for such a long time, in addition to teaching. So the mechanics of how to make a university college system operate is, I guess, where my specialisms lie.
Well, along with your commercial experience and commercial edge, which is with businesses as well. I mean, that's how I got to know you. You were doing talks to local businesses in Yorkshire, and you've got a huge wealth of knowledge in leadership. So I think the two marry well together. Just to welcome everyone, by the way, we are live on Facebook right now. We're live on LinkedIn. This will also be streamed on YouTube. And if you're listening to us, welcome. So on the podcast, it's great to have you here. If you are with us live right now and you've got questions, please do ask in the comments. They will come through, and I will try and ask Simon. Just enjoy, and if you've got comments or questions, please do ask. So just tell me more about the current role that you're in. And well, in fact, I mean, you're having a bit of a nightmare with, I'm guessing, and just from the conversation we've had, COVID, like it's hit
all of us in every aspect, the news is clearly talking a lot about universities as well. What's going on for you and students and unis right now?
I'll start broad and I'll come to us. I think quietly, COVID, universities is a success story. It's tricky, but I think after a year of this, near enough, I think it's fair to claim that technology at universities was there for what we are currently experiencing, which is what we would still call a blended learning approach. It's not fully online because we have had unlocking and there is opportunity perhaps during the summer that we will get back to some form of face-to-face, but the genie is certainly out of the bottle. The national lockdown in March meant that we, as a sector, had perhaps 2 weeks, and by 2 weeks, timetables are running, Zoom, Teams meetings, etc., were starting, and really, universities have been able to offer the right teaching to students, where, I mean, an awful lot of the experiences are currently shelved. But the challenge, I suppose, is now how do we unlock? And with the genie out of the bottle, that actually you can teach online, and then how do we adapt for our staff who've got caring and children responsibilities? Can we really insist on everybody being at their desk effectively 9 to 5? We've got far higher productivity at the moment, but of course that's because, as I tell my staff, and they certainly tell me, we're not working from home, we are living at work. So the sector in the first instance, for the majority of students, terrific. Pivot, go online. What's come out of that over the last year, though, is those peripheral and marginal opportunities. Digital poverty is very, very real. You hear it on the news about school children. It's certainly the same for adults as well in the university sector. And I think the next tranche of challenge for universities is overcoming that. It can be as peculiar as a university I know down in the south, where they've bought bicycles, a suite of Boris bikes, effectively, to enable safe type travel in COVID environments to get to and from campus, as much as a university in the Midlands I know, where every first year student is provided with at least a basic networkable laptop so that you start to overcome the digital poverty. I think the longer it goes on, then certainly colleges like mine are going to be extremely challenged, because how do you give a musician an audience and how do you test them in that environment if you can't actually sing and perform and so on? And of course, then it's going to bite. It's really interesting looking at the World Economic Forum report that came out in education this week, looking at AI, big data, organization and project management, nothing of music, culture and the arts. So how do I retain relevance for the next intake of students? And that there will be an economy out there, but you just got to be brave enough to know that it's coming. So that's been the last year in a nutshell. Actually closing the college, closing my campus was easy. The trick is always going to be how do you open it again afterwards and safely.
You mentioned then in the global report that culture and arts was sort of left out. I mean, that's so typical, is it not? How do you break those barriers? What I assume that must be part of one of the things you're trying to do all the time.
A really interesting time, actually, because there is a parliamentary review into creative arts and the leverage of monies at the moment. So you can log on, see the Hansard reports about the fund streaming for Spotify and all the other music platforms. How much does an established artist get? How much does a new artist get? And, you know, in that respect, what opportunity for new artists to break into the market? How do you make your money? If you're not known, it can't be by selling merchandise. So how then? And this is something which on a global stage is being played out. But certainly at Westminster at the moment, it's being discussed. I do think that there's hope. Most people would tell you that music arts is what's keeping them going. And we've seen real innovation in that. The Facebook live streaming and other platforms that give concerts. I was certainly up at 2 a.m. watching a favorite band of mine on Friday night. And if you think, when Glastonbury was cancelled this year, I mean, I knew that it would be cancelled because my tutors, my teachers, all of whom play at Glastonbury, were not booked before Christmas. So they delayed the booking deadlines and the announcement as far as they could. but it isn't going to happen. And yet Glastonbury is just one of over 1,000 festivals taking place in the UK, all of which are not running this year. I think the thirst for that come 2022 is going to be enormous, whether it's council-run festivals, Pride and LGBT events, or commercial festivals such as Leeds, Glastonbury, etc. So I think I can offer some hope to my students, but the gap in the middle is, do I have them in London, face-to-face teaching? What market opportunity is there for me to go online and teach them without perhaps ever having come to my campus? Or come to the campus for a week, come play with the toys, then with that learning go back again. So I've got a set of students who I must look after and deliver a teaching and learning experience that they were expecting, but there are new markets and new opportunities. So perhaps I can compete more effectively on a UK, European, even global scale now than ever I was able to before. And COVID in higher education terms really has set this cat among the pigeons. You know.
We're going to be talking about leadership. We're also going to be talking about, you've got one of your close friends is the deputy vice at Trinity in Leeds, and that could be of interest, especially for you. But what we're also what I also wanted to talk about whilst we're on it is I assume there must be a drop in international students right now, and how you see does that affect us being in the UK, and where does that take us?
Deeply geeky question, because we haven't mentioned Brexit, had we? Yes, there is a potential cliff edge. One of the things we must know here, UCAS. So people going to university, there's a UCAS deadline in the beginning of January, which will give a baseline data for what's going on in the industry. That happened just on the 29th. They delayed it by a fortnight this year. So we know that there are more people applying to go to university, but that European applications are down. And the reason that they are down is that no longer can European students rely on student loan company funding to support their studies. In my college, that challenge is about a quarter of my students are European students. So we've got to backfill and make up that loss. I suspect, though, that there is opportunity here. So rather than, I don't necessarily want to get too far into Brexit, but one of the things is that the European Organization of Higher Education means that ordinarily a bachelor's degree is 4 years in Europe and a master's is 2 years. Now, Britain got dispensation because traditionally we've offered 3-year bachelor's and 1-year masters. It's perfectly feasible to go for an accelerated degree. So instead of having these big summer gaps, you teach through those gaps. And so it's straightforward to deliver a degree in 2 years. Now, the competitive advantage of saying, I'll give you a 2-year degree, if you're, say, in Germany or France, Netherlands, a 2-year degree instead of a 4-year degree. I'll teach it via blended learning, so you can be online, but led at home, come visit us for face-to-face, touch base, and then the economies of scale start really to fluctuate because you're not having to pay for residential accommodation and the like. You can work from home, etc. This is one of those challenges that I think people are slowly starting to wake up to, that there could be, in certain subject areas, real competitive advantage. And for me, in performing arts, in pop music, as you would say, huge advantage. This is yet to be realised.
It's not something I've asked you yet, and I need to. How's it gone from geography to business and law to performing to pop music?
Back to leadership, which we'll come on to. So I was lucky enough, I really was lucky, I suppose, to arrive at the University of Glamorgan to an idea that they could put on geography. And so with a disparate team that was already there, 1 or 2 appointments after me, I led an institutional initiative to put geography on. And we connected with our surveyors, with the geologists, with the sociologists, and we created a school of geography. But all of that requires you to fill out the forms, to get stuff validated, to play by the rules, and actually invent something within the framework that operated. Consequently, I got used to the validation events. I learned how to develop degree courses, and they were getting really good feedback. So I could do that. So I got swept into quality assurance in universities. And from there, I went to work with the Quality Assurance Agency, government organization for looking after quality. demonstrating that I could do quality and I knew how to put courses together that ran properly. I jumped ship. I became a quality assurance manager at University of Wales. And because that took me then into international, I'll give you a little snippet about that in a moment. Did I get bounced then into Leeds Beckett, or Leeds Met as it was at the time, as the associate dean and then the pro dean for business and law? Because there's a couple of weird and wonderful things. 1 in 4.5 students in the UK is a business student.
Wow.
Okay, in its broadest sense, one in 4.5. And 1 in 5 students in the UK higher education system is taught through transnational education arrangements. So 20% of UK undergraduates are not in the UK, but they're in Africa, the Middle East, the Far East. And so somewhere like Leeds Beckett, most all universities have an extensive set of arrangements with colleges internationally delivering degrees. So you can go to Shanghai and you can study a Leeds Beckett degree, for example. I mean, there is a cheeky thought that as this whole thing evolves, should I send my son to do engineering in somewhere like Shanghai, exposure to language, different culture, comes out with the same degree, and then hits Europe saying, well, I've got pretty good connections, rudimentary Mandarin, and a degree from University of X, which going to that Midlands Metropolitan urban centre, I would have had anyway, and the costs are probably cheaper. It's a weird and wonderful, unpredictable world at the moment.
Yeah, I can see a huge reason why you'd do that.
But Brexit, where we started, yeah, they're significant, of course, but there is so much more out there globally.
I was actually thinking there'd be a drop. My initial thought was because of COVID, actually, and so a huge drop in international numbers. Before you answer that, though, Adam Hoskers asked a question. He'd say he'd love to hear Simon's take on how emerging artists can use digital and social to build an audience through the remainder of the crisis. What would be your thoughts on that?
Thanks for the question. It's something that he and I both mull over, though it's a while since we've shared a conversation. What am I doing at the moment? I think there are 3 strands to that answer. The first is looking at the success that there's been in platforms like TikTok. Everybody knows a sea shanty all of a sudden, in making your product as accessible as possible. So the first is I'm talking to my students about what does the current economy look like? Can you exploit a platform? How can you raise profile? If all you're going to do is declare yourself a Spotify channel and hope that people find you, that's not going to be enough. Second thing then is pushing hard on production values. You can be as creative as you like, but status quo mastered 3 chords, and that was 50 years ago. So we're talking to students about practice, practice, practice. You've got so much time at home to perfect that bit of you that you really need to, you will always be a better guitar player for more rehearsal time. So that's an element. And I think the third element is actually to understand your naivete, and that within our college, for example, help is available. So where is the marketing? Where are the production values? What is the leveraging on intellectual property rights? Because for new talent particularly, they're often committed to their art, but quite naive as to the sharks in the sea of culture. Remind them of this, the Main Man Music was the first manager that signed Bowie about 65, 66, took 5% net forever. And so tight was that contract, Bowie could never release himself from it, for all his largesse. In my time, I suppose it was Bros who signed a catastrophic contract. It was huge.
They had some good songs.
But they did a world tour where they paid everybody off the gross income, not the net income, which bankrupted them.
Right.
It's a famous book. And so Adam is going to be concerned with his students in contemporary music, as I am mine, that you don't fall into that elephant trap. So even if you are successful, it doesn't cost you your career. So at the moment, we are talking very much about how you platform, how you protect your property rights, and how you leverage if you can. And all of that has to be on the basis of some quality musicianship. But, take that away from musicianship, knowing your stuff. You've got time to read, time to study, time to learn.
So one of the things I'm hearing there is take opportunity, but at the same time be very cautious about what you end up not forward thinking about.
Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
And if you can't measure it, go and talk to somebody that's doing some measuring as well. That's partly what this conversation's about, Johnny. I mean, universities are odd because they're quite protective of their intellectual property rights, but they're always willing to talk to stakeholders, be they students or businesses or other universities, about what they're going through and sharing the good stuff, sharing the solution.
Yeah. And just on a point, I mean, marketing is what I do, and so the question sort of taps into what I think. There's this parish council Zoom going around at the moment that just looks truly awful. But I've seen a music artist that has turned it into some music, and he's gone viral, and so some of it is just about being agile and being there, timing, being creative, and going and just putting yourself out there.
The flippancy feels like a normal meeting. The thing is with that, though, as viral as it is, it's that difficult second album. The guy won't make any money out of it, and if that's all that they can do, that's all that they can do. If they can take it by way of a sample or a clip, they can build it into the sort of stuff that they're doing anyway. It's got more longevity, and actually, that's a balance, isn't it? It would be terrible if my talented students turned into one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
And not it's a funny old industry because not everybody wants to be on stage, not everybody wants to be the name. Here, a nasty statistic from last year's Glastonbury, which is not a reflection on them, it's the music industry, it's a reflection of, they just about got 50-50 on the performers on stage. But all the industry that sits behind that, from marketing to the guy that plugs in the guitar on stage into the speaker, it was around about 90% men, 10% women. So one of the major pushes, if COVID has given us any time to stop and to think, for me, it's how do we push hard women in music? And the equality ticket for us is about that gender balance, because, of course, the music industry has always been hugely accommodating of all shades of life, all shades of politics. But actually, currently, we've got a real problem with gender balance. So that's where a lot of which, I'm talking with the women in my college as to the opportunities and how you position yourself, rather more than worried that we are not number one on the TikTok list just at the moment.
Yeah. And that is it. Are you seeing gender balance more so in music, or it's just across the board in unis and subjects?
Well, I think the thing is with data analytics, which has sort of hit business over the last decade, ask me the question and I'll find out the answer that you want. So if I go back to the very beginning of my lecturing career, which was geography and specifically physical geography, it was around about 80-20 male female. When I left lecturing, when I left lecturing and left Morgan, 10, 12 years ago, that had balanced out to around about 60-40 women. Now, at the moment, my college, it's the balance is absolutely 50-50. What I'm finding really not interesting, more frustrating actually, is many of the female students are coming in wanting to sing. So they play guitar to a good standard, because guitar and keyboard is an audition and musicianship then, but they're very much aligned to singing. And a lot of guys are coming in with music technician, production, or management ambitions. And so how do we, with my schools and music group officer, it's particularly in the boroughs of London and further afield, how do you promote the idea that this actually is a useful, complex service industry? Your skill sets will be hugely valued as a producer, as a promoter, as a manager. It's not just the X factor and going out there and singing. The music industry is a bigger and broader industry than that. So that's kind of the drumbeat that we're pushing. But it depends. It depends where you go. The government does measure this through the Higher Education Statistics Agency. You can pull all sorts of rabid statistics out of this, which will show you the middle class dividend, the the natural advantage to being white, not black or minority ethnic. And it spits out these sorts of elements which show that working class lads going to university are the most challenged and the least successful of all. That actually tugs at my heartstrings because I am that kid from working class background, first of my family to go to university, screwed my A-levels up completely, was given an opportunity through clearing, ended up at a polytechnic in London, and I've not actually left university sector since. But it sits with me how I sort of fell into higher education by luck as much. I just got it completely wrong. But then my family had no social capital in this at all. Didn't know how to advise me for A-levels, didn't know how to advise me through UCAS and the polytechnic system, PCAS at the time. So I suppose though I sit atop the tree at the moment as principal, I'm fiercely agitating that the application system should be smooth, that the product we offer should be obvious, that what you're buying as a student should be absolutely transparent and understood. And of course, the push out at the end of that is, what might I do as a job? What is the career? What is the industry out there? Because we cannot just be a sausage factory to occupy somebody for 3 years, 30 grand's worth of debt, whatever, move on. Well, especially if they're going to turn into a chart-topping success. We want a piece of that. We did that to them.
There's a whole movement for traineeships and apprenticeships and experience. What's, if you're, maybe you've got children that are 16, 17, maybe you are 16, 17 and you're looking to make some decisions. What's your take on experience versus qualification? And what do you find organizations are looking for? And how would you weigh that up? Because I know that your history is that you've been an admissions tutor as well. You've got very clear, I'm sure you could help people understand personal statements, how to write them, what to put in them, all sorts of different stuff. So I'm tapping into that as well, really.
Huge question. On a personal basis, Johnny, I've got 2 nephews, one of whom has graduated an apprenticeship in aircraft engineering, now works for GEC, and his younger brother has gone off to be an apprentice in the car industry. My daughter is thinking of medicine, and that's what she's pursuing at the moment. And I'm delighted to say that my 15-year-old son has no ambition at all. Now, that sounds paradoxical, but from the age of did I want to join the Royal Air Force? And I did when I was 18, then classed militarily unfit because of asthma. And out I went, knowing then nothing of any ambition for careers at all. So the idea that apprenticeships, there's this great Cameron movement to tax companies to provide funding that would generate an apprenticeship system in the UK, such as we envy from Germany, is only a good thing. My nephew has got a degree. He's got 4 years of direct industry experience. But I think he's an extremely employable person. I think that industries buy into this far outstrips higher education. Higher education has had to sort of work very hard to catch up to be either the educator or the assessor, the provider. And slowly it's getting there. And then, of course, COVID has really rather stopped so much of this because apprenticeships were the obvious place where, well, go study, but there isn't an industry to house you anymore. I think it will come back, but it will come back in a selected way, much like COVID has done. I work a lot with the Institute of Couriers, and they are looking after the last mile delivery. So the logistics side of getting your parcel across country is one thing, but then how do you actually service that need? And boy, I can see now my Alexa device is flashing yellow, so somebody's delivered something today, or nothing's been delivered, but the guy is so used to being here, he's just checked in to check that everything's okay. Now that industry is looking, I mean, I hear somewhere in the system that Amazon is looking for another 5,000 employed in that delivery sector. It's industry controlled. It's got an apprenticeship. Last mile delivery has an apprenticeship. Fantastic. If that's the way, look, I mean, go back to, I'm waffling a bit, go back to Blair in 97 pushed that in England, not in Wales because we're devolved, England, 18 to 35-year-olds, there should be approximately 45% of people going to university. And so the push was to widen that access. But if university is that beneficial, why stop at 50%? Why is it not more and more? Why should it not be even 100% if it's an ambitious aim? So that you've got apprenticeships which provide a different and an affordable way of accessing higher education, fantastic. Really, I mean, I look as principal, I look, are there apprenticeships that I can usefully adapt and adopt at the moment? I'm struggling a wee bit because I can't compete with major sort of business schools at universities doing MBAs and other such things. But you keep a watch on them. You mentioned, in Leeds Trinity has a fantastic reputation because, of course, they were born from that teacher training. I don't speak for Leeds Trinity. It's just something I know from being in the city for a while, that, from teacher training, which is almost a quasi apprenticeship postgraduate anyway. They're making great strides in upping the accessibility. When I was at London Metropolitan University, doing similarly, working with people in the city on couriers, on translation and other services, on banking services, because it's seen that if your workforce is educated to a higher education standard, that has to be a good thing. But not everybody can necessarily afford it in the way that it's structured at the moment. So yeah, big thumbs up for apprenticeships, especially when what we can now offer as well is blended learning from home. I think one of the next big things, Johnny, is bite-sized learning. Why not spend your 6 weeks of summer holidays doing 2 modules? And, over that time, it's a bit like taking on the Open University and beating it at its own game. But to come out with a smaller qualification than a degree, or maybe 2 or 3 that build up to a degree style or a postgraduate style is some of where we're going at the moment.
Well, whilst we're there, with regard to admissions, what would be the top tips for a personal statement?
Yeah, it's a funny place to start that, because not all universities read personal statements. If you are in a Russell group, you look at something like English at Cambridge, 80% or 80 people apply for one place in English. Your personal statement will be read. They've got to say, but if you want to go and do psychology at University of Poppleton, then if it's a widening access institution, if it's a post-92 or former polytechnic, chances are in your local town that the personal statement isn't going to be as important as your A-level grades and your desire to come and study locally. It's part of the mix. So when writing a personal statement, you've got 5 or 6 choices on a UCAS form. So you have to write in general terms, but it's always good to write about where your interest came from, how you've pursued it. And it's not just, if your interest is in geography, let's be safe. You just to say I did geography GCSE and now I'm doing geography A-level isn't really enough of an interest to say why you want to do geography. Capture that passion. And also, where's your ambition going after that? That can help too. If I was reading a form these days and a student is telling me in their personal statement that they desperately want to be a weatherman on telly or a weather girl on telly, that's fine. But you can't do it doing a geography degree. Better to go and do meteorology or physics, and you've not done a maths A level, so you're not going to be that weather presenter working with the Met Office. So it's important then to understand this sort of the basic totem of admissions. If reading the personal statement, you can demonstrate that you're the right person to do the right degree at the right life stage, then we've got something to talk about. If it's coming in on a whim or something a little less solid than that, if your personal statement can convince by way of conviction, you're struggling. But I think there's also something key to remember here. UCAS underwent an enormous revolution over several years. So these days, you apply, and the deadline's just gone for the first tranche. You are now in the process of open days and making your choices, your firm and your insurance choice. But at the death, and particularly in a COVID situation where circumstances can radically change in a week, UCAS will still provide you with the opportunity, even after your grades, to withdraw from your commitment, to find somewhere else, to discuss with that admissions team if there's a place, and to move. So it's not like being on a roller coaster anymore where you can only get off at the end. There is always a process now where even if you've committed, you can change your mind. And most universities, I think, would prefer you go to university first, and to come to us would be ideal. But there is sensible advice as to how the UCAS system operates, so that it's always client-led. It's always that the students' interests are at heart. And that comes to now. What do I tell my daughter now? Does she, she's 17, she's 18 next week. Does she go to university this year? Does she not bother applying? Does she apply but defer? Or does she apply and then just wait and let's see what October looks like before deciding if you're going to do anything at all? And these are, I suppose, the choices that many teenagers currently have. And there is that little thing of A levels, and how the heck is that going to work in the middle of all that?
And actually taking a year out right now is not even favourable, because there's not much you can do. So there's not much to weigh it up against at the moment. I want to get into your leadership experience, and you've worked in state universities, in privately owned. You have a huge wealth of knowledge. I mean, of course, universities are government regulated, very complex organisations. How have you managed change? How have you been involved in leadership, and all of those skills are transferable into business as well? So I'm wondering what tips you might have for other leaders to consider, and some of the things that you've found in the past.
Something struck me the other day listening to a lecture from the officer in charge of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. Now, as an officer in the Royal Air Force, leadership all over his shoulders and the scrambled egg on the peak of his hat. But he said his first leadership role was when he was 8 and a sixer in the Cubs. And that did make me smile, because I had that similar experience, and I'm sure many of us do. And then, of course, we all have experience of being led or being managed. And so I think, if I'm to proselytize at all, a lot of my experience and my style is not doing what's been done to me in the past. So, heavens above, if you were to have my colleagues on the line, what would they tell you? I measure twice, I cut once. As much as I can, I'm consultative. I don't operate a cabal. I ask everybody. So where there is general strategic direction to take, decisions to be made, for me, it's always in one of two camps: that I'm informing you of the decision I'm making. You're not part of that decision-making process, but you're informed. And in being informed, because we are then going to have to implement this, you've got a say. If I've got the time and I've got the ability, then it's slightly different, of course, that this is a decision I'm going to have to make. I need your voice now so as to help me make that decision. So I try to run a really flat structure. I try to keep everybody informed as they can be. Now, some of the tricks to that, particularly in COVID times, are running town hall meetings. And I regularly run these once a month. I do a session like this with all my students, and anybody can come, and they do, and they can say what the heck they like. There can't be a topic that's off the table. If for a commercial reason I can't tell you, I will tell you that we can't discuss that because it's commercially sensitive. But actually, at the moment particularly, it's about emotion. It's how do you make somebody feel? Do you make them feel valued, or do you dismiss them? Are you able, even if their idea is left field and is disruptive, to let them have their say? So I suppose in the first instance, for me, it's transparency, that people must know what you're doing to them and why, because if you've got them on board, life is an awful lot easier, especially with distance learning and working from home at the moment, because militancy comes from something that you can't see. You've no idea the pressure that they're under, not just at home, but within their broader family circumstances. I think the second element at the moment for me is about compassion, therefore. I'm known for using the phrase that we're living at work. I'm not living at home. I'm working from home. I'm living at work. I watched on the weekend, my team had an open day on Saturday. And at 11:30, they were still discussing on a WhatsApp group ideas, bouncing off each other. They're missing the social side of being face to face. What the heck are you doing at 11:30 at night, effectively working on ideas for the company? So to have some compassion and to be aware as an individual, but also as a group, think what people are doing. I would also offer that, thirdly, I probably should be looking after myself better. Now, that's not self-indulgent, but if I'm trying to make decisions or trying to work with people, and I've got family pecking at my head, I'm not in the best position to make decisions. So I think it's to have a little bit of courage to let people know who and where you are at as well. And in fact, that's in my environment, my main office. I have Colombians and Ukrainians. I have Spanish and Russians and Greeks. I have somebody from South Africa, somebody from Ghana. I have a couple of English people, and of course, me, and I'm Welsh. The point is that actual family cultural norms and levels of privacy and what people are willing to give of themselves is different in every culture. And in that multicultural way, simply because I am saying, as I said at the top of this answer, I'm transparent and I'm open and I try to be inclusive, that's lovely. But there's no way necessarily that matches others' cultural norms. So to have a little bit of time and space to think about individuals and not push too hard, be aware that productivity is there, be output driven. And then the bottom line, let me give you a summary. I'm paid to make decisions, so I will make them. And though I've heard you, I don't work in a democracy. It's my responsibility. You'll get the credit. And beyond that, we're spinning plates, Johnny. Beyond that, it's whether you can carry the mood, whether you portray a convincing leader. But I will offer this as well, as I do everywhere when I was Pro-Dean and then Dean of Business and Law. Personally, and it is very personal, I don't think that leadership can be taught. I think management can be taught, but innately, you're either leadership potential or you're not. And that bit of self-awareness, I think, is crucial. If you're not naturally seen or you're not naturally able to lead, be aware where you're in a sharp pit.
That's a really interesting point, and yeah, I can relate to that. We must talk about your style. You're you're certainly eccentric, and you've got some. Well, I think. And you've got some great styles. I mean, you know, even the picture that we used for this today, you're wearing a pith helmet. Was it the Bulawayo? I can't pronounce it. Bulawayo pattern.
Almost. It's a Bulawayo pattern pith helmet, and that photograph was taken by a colleague when I was working in Zambia.
Where's this come from? What you know, you mentioned the RAF a few times. We've got the planes behind you. I know you're very much into it. In fact, for people that are watching, do you mind giving a quick tour like you did earlier for me?
Okay, so these are just historic aircraft identification cards from the Second World War. I like planes. You can see just up there, there's some Airfix models still hanging from the ceiling, and it goes all the way around. This is my cabin, my office. Okay, so it's my space. Let's say to Johnny that I know I'm 14 years old, but I've got a credit card. Airfix model and paint, I'll buy that. Where does it come from? Okay, so yeah, all right. Let's go deep and personal. I said to the old man, my dad, bless him, that I would love to be somebody thought of as contemplative and thoughtful and quiet. And he sort of smiled and said, yeah, that's all right, but that's not how we brought you up. So the sins of the father are visited upon the son. I look at my parenting of my kids, and I expect them to get up, get dressed, get downstairs and breakfast. I expect them, if I speak to them, to stand up and speak to me. And if any of the audience, was introduced to my son or daughter, you stand up straight, you look the person in the eye, and you answer the question, and be prepared to ask a question back. So in a way, there's that bit of it. I'm sure some of it is genetic. You give me a microphone and an audience, and that's lecturing, by the way. most lecturing is infotainment, is a performance in education. So to have the confidence that speaking publicly, one's pulse rate goes down, and I know in Leeds, in Yorkshire Mafia events and others, you know that I'm extremely comfortable in front of hundreds of people talking. But then there is, I suppose, the other bit, which was that having had a mop of curly hair from way back when, there was no haircut that ever suited. Having had very wide feet, there was a choice of brown or black shoes from Clark's. Thanks very much. So by the time you get to sort of 51, as I am now, and find that you can control your hair with a little bit of hair wax, and that you can get your shoes made for you, and I'm in the position to play. If I offered my father's advice, I'll offer my mother's. She said, from about the age of 5 or 6, you were in your late 40s, and you've just grown into it as you've grown up. So yeah, Leeds is a cloth town. I would go and frequent Crombie and buy an overcoat or two, and I like hats, and I found that I could tie a bow tie, and I found actually that people, the old adage that it's not what you say, it's how you make people feel about what you said. So such was the same, swanning in and out wearing a bow tie or a Homburg or a nice overcoat and walking through town. And it was a nice distraction because family living in Cardiff, I'm living in Leeds and commuting. My evening may be spent talking to somebody about a silk handkerchief or buying one off an antiques or an eBay site. And it just became a distraction and fun, and it became a new hobby. Now, what does that have to do with the price of fish? The other element of it is that from a university point of view, Leeds, an experience of that, I was known, and I don't think I'm known just for being gobby and overconfident. I mean, talk to me for an evening, you'll find that out. But it's having the awareness that this is branding. And to be honest, Leeds Metropolitan, Leeds Beckett's business and law faculty is the biggest in the UK, 6,500 students when I was there. If somebody says, do you know Simon from Leeds Beckett? And they know because they know me, and it's because they bumped into me at an event where I was the idiot wearing a bow tie, or the one striding through town wearing a fez or a pith helmet. It's self-branding. And if you've got the confidence to sustain that, and it's a bit of authenticity, it's not total pretense. I enjoy it. It's good fun.
Well, you like your classic cars as well, don't you? And I've often seen pictures, and so it is. If from my point of view, it looks very authentic.
Well, I'd love to afford a £200,000 Porsche Speedster from the 1950s. As it is, I have a replica, and then I get sucked into saying, "But it's got a Porsche engine in it. It sounds authentic." But it's a bit flim-flam. My wife cringes when we drive around because people will toot the horns and wave and flash lights and point, and the attention for her is just too much. Me, poop, poop, I'm perfectly happy with that. But it's and now, hell's teeth, I find myself, of course, in the creative music industry, and I'll let you know that I might have met Emma Bunton recently, and I didn't know who she was, and she looked at me stupid when she explained who she was, but that's okay. She now knows who I am. She knows me, even if I didn't know her. This happens a lot, where I'm not up with what's happening in the music youth scene. I have people that advise me on that, so I play up to the tweed and the bow tie and the old dullard, and it's genuinely it's empowering of my staff. Oh God, they're gonna have to tell me what I'm supposed to be thinking again now, and it's a kind of game that I play.
So it's not put you off wearing any of this to be in the pop music side of things. You've played on it more. You've played on it more. I like it.
Yeah, well, it's self-branding, isn't it? And because
personal
because
branding.
I'm a non-specialist, that's the thing.
Personal branding is so important, and I talk about that on a daily basis, really. It's been brilliant talking to you, Simon. We've come to the end of our time. It's been really good, and it's been brilliant to just catch up with you. I miss our conversations. And you wanted to you wanted to just mention Leeds Trinity a tiny bit more, whilst there's quite a Yorkshire audience here.
I was going to fly a flag for a friend of mine, actually. When I was at Leeds Beckett, had tremendous fun there. Malcolm Todd was head of psychology there. Now, he and I left roughly the same time, Leeds. He's found a way back. He's currently interim, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Leeds Trinity. And I think my shout out to Malcolm is, of the three universities, of course, it's the one with potential for huge growth. We've got a new Vice-Chancellor. It's being captured. Malcolm is very busy there. But in terms of the business connections of Leeds and region, he's somebody really worth looking up. Got tremendous experience in the city, but also then in working with young people in both apprenticeships and the direction of travel that you can make at universities. And he's back and he's new to the city, in effect, in a different role, very significant and influencing role. So go and look up Leeds Trinity and go and look up Malcolm Todd and tell him I said I sent you. He'll probably thank you for it. But I just think it's well worthwhile. And just talking with him, the potential to come back and see how he's doing and revisit the city would be a welcome one. In the meantime, look, my website and my email is there. And if you need to and want to find me, ask me a question, propel a chat, whether it's about the music industry or universities or even just your son or daughter and the challenges they're facing. Drop me a line. More than happy to pick this up.
I was about to say, you say the website's there, but I'm not seeing it. Just tell me what the website is.
So, well, it's LCCM.
Oh, that is there. I apologize.
LCCM. My email is very simple there. It's in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it into the public chat so that everyone's got it.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, that's great. So I was about to say, if people do want to get hold of you, what's the best way? So we're just about to share your email address and
email is fine. Well, I'm there. Email. I mean, I've got a popular name. I'm easily found. Email is fine. LinkedIn is fine. And thanks, you got me there.
We've got the website there as well. It's been, as I said, brilliant catching up. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. Please watch out for another live Q&A. It's been great to have you here, whether you've been watching or listening, I should say. And Simon, we can't wait to see you back in Leeds at some point. And also just lastly, a big shout out. You've had your vaccination jab, haven't you? And you had COVID, unfortunately, but you've recovered.
Thank you. I would have taken socks, but my wife gave me COVID for Christmas instead. And yes, we've both been jabbed recently.
But I guess your message is go and get the jab.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Get vaccinated and then go home and stay locked down, which is what we've done. It'll happen that it's going to unlock, but it was a profoundly emotional thing getting the inoculation. I found it very strange, and it's provoked out there among friends real interest. Why you now and why now? Well, because if I get COVID proper with asthma and the age and I might die. So I got done early. Before my mother, indeed. She was, really? You're fit and healthy, Mum. It was your rubbish genes that means I got it jabbed first. But yeah, it's a sore arm and worth it, I feel, for a couple of days.
On that note, we will leave you and we will see you all soon. Take care.
You've been listening to the Johnny Ross audio experience. Thanks so much for joining me. If you want to continue the conversation, head over to my website, fleek.marketing, or find me on LinkedIn. That's all for today. Please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, tag me in your social media posts, and please leave me a review on iTunes. It will make a huge difference for me. I will see you soon.